So, hello, I am Fernando Tudela, yes. The objective of this speech is to have a great time, a fun time. And yeah, I decided to talk about unit tests. So maybe it's not the best choice to have a fun time, but I'll do my best. I'll start with, oh, sorry. As I was saying, once upon a time, well, I am a finance and operations developer. I am not going into detail of experience or blah 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 because nobody cares. Let's talk about what we want to hear, that it's unit testing. So once upon a time, as a F&O developer, I started in product development, and I was told to do unit tests, and I was like, oh my god! So I have to do the code twice. I have to learn how to unit test, and the worst part is that I am lazy because I am a developer, so I want to do as few things as possible. So it was a very bad day, and I started in this world, and I can tell you now that even for my laziness, it was a very big discovering. And so yeah, as I was saying, I like to give talks from time to time. This is me in Iceland, pretending not to be dying inside because of freezing cold and trying to look cool. Well, I think I didn't get to that. I have LinkedIn, Twitter, and Fernie Tudela. Everybody calls me Fernie, but you can call me anytime. No, just kidding. Just kidding. I mean, for professional purposes. And yeah, you can Fernie Tudela in Twitter, and Fernie Tudela Dev is my blog, where I am going to upload this season. In fact, I am recording it for the blog, well, to YouTube and the blog. Yeah, this was for the, you can call me anytime, but I forgot I have that. So let's start with the thing. What's going, well, first of all, how many of you are F&O developers? Okay, almost everybody. How many of you have done for real project unit testing? Okay. Nobody. So do you get the point? It's something that even colleagues of mine that works in C# and other languages, they told me, if I go to a project where no unit tests are implemented, I start looking for another job. And how is that possible? That's something that it's mandatory for everybody, and we are the only ones in the, not the only one, but like we don't do a unit test. So when I was preparing this talk, I knew you weren't going to give credit to me because nobody knows me, and you know I look young, so I decided to appeal to the authority fallacy and say what Martin Rapp says, because he's always right. We know he's always right, and if not, he's going to let you know in the. So he said, I believe that unit testing is extremely important, and the lack of its adoption, well, yeah, you can read. And he said that that happens because we actually don't know how to unit test things. So now the objective of this talk is not only to have a fun time, but also to try to pique your interest about unit tests and to like make you try to at least explore this world by your own and start, you know, learning how to unit test and so on. So let's start first things first. What's exactly a unit test? Well, a unit test, I don't know the exact definition, but it's code that tests code. But not every code that tests code is a unit test. It needs to test a unit of logic. It needs to test a bit of logic. So it's usually a method, but not every method is a unit of logic, because somewhere in the ERP there's a method that invoices a sales order. And we know that's not a unit of logic, because behind that it's happening many things. So this method is going to call other methods, and those methods are going to call other methods. You have to go where that logic is added. So in the lower level of logic. Okay? That's unit tests. That's a unit test, I mean. And they have a lot of properties. Probably you are not visualizing what a unit test is now, but I think during the speech or the season, we are going to at least have an idea with examples and with demos and so on. So it's a test made out by developers for developers. They are thought to be run in development time, or like when you do a check-in or whatever. But it's not what you would test when you finish your development and you as a human try to test your development. That's not a unit test. A unit test is made for testing that your specific code, even they are stupid. Unit tests, when you first see them, they are stupid. And you have to test that this unit of logic does what you think it does. It needs to do. That's it. And they are stupid, but when they work together, they do not stupid at all things. So this is the famous pyramid of healthy testing strategy. The unit tests are in the lowest level. That means that they are the most important, and also they are the most in terms of numbers. So, for example, this is stolen for David Frostley and Joris de Gruyter. Note that I am also using the fallacy of authority. So they said in Microsoft they have implemented now a pyramid where each step in the pyramid multiplies by 10. So for one end-to-end test, or I don't know, like that would be like, for example, an RSAT test. For one of those, we should have an integration test, a component test, and a unit test. So we have a large amount of unit tests. Why? Because unit tests are very small, very easy to write. They are maintainable. We are going to go back to those properties. But the thing is, that's what it should be. Unit tests are very... Oh, no. Okay. Unit tests are the wrong button. Unit tests are very isolated. And yeah, we are going back to that. No, don't worry. So, and as I was saying, they shouldn't be a big deal to develop them. They should be very easy to develop them. At the very first beginning, it could be a little bit like new, and you have to spend some time, but it's not that much. So, as I was saying, yeah, and imagine we have three objects. A little bit of abstraction here. We have three objects, and those objects that they have four logic things or unit of logic or states. I don't care. And if you try to test, like unit tests, try to test everything very precisely. So if you try to test everything very precisely, you are going to give up because you cannot test everything. So unit test, what does is isolate the problem, divide it impera. So it gets the three objects and it tests the four states of each one. So it would be 12 unit tests, but not 64. Because if you try to test not only every piece of code individually, but how it behavior with other pieces of code, you are going to get crazy. So for that, those are the component and integration tests that are not that exhaustive. So we test very exhaustive everything individually, and how they work together. Then we don't are that much exhaustive, and those are component and integration tests. In my case, we decided to integrations and component tests, put it together, because if not, there were too many unit tests and many things. Don't worry. I meant about this. This is our testing for, we can say, granularity in one product we've developed, and that's not because I want an applause. That's to say, yeah, look how unit tests, we have 181 of them, and it takes like 26.7 seconds to run. While a business cycle test, this is made out of form adapters. They take more or less the same than an RSAT test in terms of time. It's two of them, 1.3 minutes. So you can see how unit test is very fast. We are going to go back to that concept again. So if you want to know more, I don't know what I was talking about, what I was thinking when I prepared this. If you want to know more about the other tests, like component integrations, the ones that the scope of them are the interaction of those unit of logic differently. Well, I'll be doing other season in Dynamics Mind that I hope they allow me to record also, and I can upload to my blog. So, REMS. What's REMS? It's nothing. I invented it because I wanted a mnemotechnic rule, but it's the properties of unit tests. We'll go after that with a demo. This is the theory part, so don't expect all the speech to be as boring. But we have the unit test should be reliable, should be fast. I put instantaneous because if not, it would be and it was very hard. So it's maintainable, precise, and simple. So reliable. They need to work like the excuse of it works in my machine. No, that doesn't count for unit tests. Unit tests should work in every environment, and for that should provide their own data, should be completely data independent, okay? Because they are testing something simple. We should be able to provide our own data. It's a cost we can, if we are doing RSAT and we have to provide all the data, that's going to consume a lot, and we have to maintain but unit tests are simple, fast. It should be fast because we are executing them in development time. And if we have 100 tests that they aren't fast, developers are going to stop executing them, and so we are going to have a massive amount of tests that no one executes. Maintainable. They should be maintainable as all the code in the world, so they should. And also, if you try to make them maintainable, probably it's going to help you to write better code. So unit tests are going to help you to write better code. Yeah, we're going to go back to all those concepts. They should be precise. That means when you know what unit test failed, you know exactly what the problem is or where the problem is. Again, we are going to go back to this concept with examples. And simple. If you are testing something simple, you should do it simple. You are not adding more complexity than the code that you are testing, makes no sense. Okay, so it uses the system framework, like all the tests in XPP, form adapter based test, ATL tests, everyone uses the systems framework. Basically, it's a class you extend and an attribute you put to the method. And so in that class, you have the asset, and you basically check what you want to check. What about ATL? Maybe you have heard about ATL? Yeah? Okay. ATL is not thought to be used for unit tests. Why? Because ATL comes to do sort of a data model for our unit tests. And ATL is, for example, if you try to create a customer for a test, ATL tries to do it, creating the deal party table record the cast table, and trying to do something more or less good, like more or less consistent. For unit tests, we don't need that. If I want to test, for example, a display method that it's going to get the name of the name node, but it's going to get the customer group from somewhere, what I need is primary key of the cast table and the customer group. The other fields can be void, can be empty. So I initialize my variable, do insert, I don't care because I need what I need for testing what I need to test, and that's unit testing. Doesn't care about other things, doesn't care if there are problems in the cast table. No, this is testing the display method, and the display method is getting what I expected to, is doing what I expected to do. ATL, you shouldn't use the ATL for everything, but I use it for unit tests. You can use it for unit tests too, but it's not the sweet spot. I mean, you could avoid using them if you want at all, but for some things it looks greater. But I don't want to spend more time with that. What you shouldn't do is ATL data, and also be very careful using ATL entities, because, for example, I had to do a test and a unit test. It was taking 2 seconds, a unit test, and that's too much. And I didn't know why that was happening, and it was happening because I was calling the construct of the ATL sales order, blah blah blah, and it was doing an initialization, and it was too much code. We don't want noise in our unit tests. We want to go straight to the point. So yeah, you can use it, but ATL is thought to be used for component and integration tests. So when you want to have more things and to test more like what you expect to as a human to test, not the unit tests. This is an example of a unit test. This is an example of a method that gets a view, and it needs a table buffer. Okay, simple. I am going to unit test it, and I want to use the ATL because I want. So I don't care if that view is made out of 3, 4, 5, or 20 data sources. I don't even going to look at the data source of a structure of that view and insert all the relationships between them in order to be able to test it. No, what I am going to do is this thing that makes no sense at all for a developer, that it's getting a view buffer, putting dummy data there, and using this is called here. So I am going to use this view buffer to send it to the method. Remember, this was the method that I wanted to use. Why? Because what I want to test is that the information goes from here to here. I don't want to test if the view works fine. This is the spirit of unit testing. Other tests will test if the view works fine, and probably if the view works fine and this works fine, they are going to work fine together. Probably, not always. That's why we have component tests too, or integration tests. Okay. So, in that case, what is the ATL framework doing for us? Sorry for I am giving you the back, but it's because it's hard with this position. Why am I using ATL? Well, if I wouldn't be using ATL, I couldn't do the ATL specification where I send all the specifications for a specific record. But I could do this asset, parent bomb version, this asset, each one of the fields. It looks prettier using ATL, but it doesn't add any value. For the value is that the code is more, it's easier to read and so on. Some useful test attributes. I don't want to spend a lot of time here because most of them are general, not for units. They don't are unit testing specific. So for grouping and filtering, this is very useful for unit testing. You can put like attributes to like classify your tests, and so for example, you can decide if you want to execute in Visual Studio test console that it's used for the pipelines to execute the test and so on. And maybe you want to every check-in you want to test that all the unit tests are working. Why? Because unit tests are fast. Maybe you cannot spend every checking 20 minutes or something like that building. No, but unit tests should take, you've seen that, maybe, I don't know, 1 minute or whatever. So maybe you can put that granularity or that priority or that grouping attribute and automate the execution only for the ones that are unit tests. Sorry. The dependency, it's more used for the higher level in the pyramid tests that they are not able to provide their own data, and so they are going, for example, if you have RSAT or the alternative using Go that are form adapters, you probably need to have a tier 2 environment where you have a database and you run the regression test there. In that case, you can choose the company. Also, you can put this, I needed to use it for some unit tests, but it's not very common, where you don't care about it. I don't know how it does, but it's magic. You don't care about number sequences. You put this attribute and you create a cast table, and it gets automatically the account ID without creating all the setup for the number sequences. But it takes time, so avoid it for unit tests. It's better to put customer 1 and forget about it. Test security, you can run tests using some specific roles. You create a persona and you assign it roles, so you can test. For example, I have an example, we can see it later if you want. I have it, I can show it or not. Let's see how much time I need. And others, I don't want to. So let's go to the machine and let's see a few examples. If I can, I have a local VM here. I'm going to show you the development. And after that, I'm going to show you how I decided to unit test it. And we are going to apply the RIMPS law to everyone. I mean, we are going, because when we create a unit test, or at least I do it, when I create a unit test, I always ask me, is this unit test RIMPS? Well, I mean, it's a way of calling, but has all the properties, is reliable, is instant, is fast, is maintainable, is precise, is it simple? We have to ask every one of those, and we are going to do this exercise together. I don't know if you know paddle. It's a sport similar to tennis, okay? I play it, and I decided to do a paddle management, okay? So we have paddle bookings, that it's reservations, paddle courts, that are the place where you play, and paddle teachers, and paddle centers, okay? It's easy. So we have a center with many courts, and each center has its own time zone, because it could be an international paddle management, okay? So we have teachers that are, let's see them. We have teachers. Oh, I didn't translate it to English. Sorry. It's the Xavier professor, you know, that guy. It's powerful. We have the centers and the time zones. So we have Brussels, Brazil, blah, 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 okay? And so and the courts are part of a center, okay? More or less, you are following me? It's easy. So when I do a paddle booking, I create it, and based on the court and based on the center, it's going to get the time zone. And this is important, the date time is not going to be calculated as by default using the user settings or whatever. It's going to use that specific time zone. So to achieve that, what I did is to create an ADT that has no conversion in the property, okay, time zone preference, no conversion. So I am the one that handles that conversion using this utils. That it's an edit method that it's going to get the date, apply the time zone, save it into the database in TMT0, and after that, in order to show it, remove that time zone. Okay, so we are then all in the same page, more or less. Well, you don't have to understand that code because we are going to unit test it. So, so how would I unit test this method? And I have to say one thing: as I am lazy, and I already told you, I don't want to make many unit tests. So instead of creating an edit method for each one of the fields that are going to be managed by me, or the time zone of them are going to be managed by me, I decided to move it to a utils and only test that, because we are not telling all the methods. If a method calls another method that we already tested, we are not testing that new method. So let's see. I don't actually know if I expected to start with that. No, it was the second. Okay, no problem. We have to test our edit method. So we are going to test for only one method. We are going to do two tests. One when it's acting like set, and one when it's acting like get. So for one method, we are creating two unit tests. So you see how many the unit tests are going to grow fast. That's why in the pyramid they were so wide, that part. And we are going to call it as a set and send dummy data where we have the we have the UI date time. So this is the date that it's going to be input in the form, and we expect it to be saved, removing the time zone that we are going to send. So this time zone is Copenhagen Madrid. The UI time is this one, and we are going to remove the time zone Copenhagen Madrid to the UI date time, and so we are going to get what we expect in the table. So we have UI date, we have table what we expect to save in the table, in the database, and the time zone. That's it. That's all. We call it, and we assert that the table, that the value that we expect in the table is the same as it is actually saved into the table. And for the get, we do the same, but the opposite. We put the table, we assign to the table the value that we expect to be in the table, and we check that when we use that method as a get, it gets the value that we expect to be shown in the UI. That's the unit test, and you can say, but you are almost doing the logic again for that. Yes, I am almost doing it. It's not true, because that's way simpler. That needs to work for that particular example. But yeah, and that's true. You have to do it again. But once you have done your logic, it's fairly simple to do it, to add this. It's quick, and I could execute it so you can see how it works. It's taking time. Okay, so we have our unit tests, and we have the get and the set. We can select them. Oh, I cannot do that. Control. Okay, and run. Yeah. So this is an example of the data. Okay, so it checks that there's no mismatch between dates for a specific teacher, and it does take into account the difference, the time zone differences. Okay, so how would we try to test it? Maybe we create a new one, a new record with a teacher, assign a center with the time zone, blah, 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 add a new record. We are not doing that. That's not a unit test. What we are going to do is, we have checked that the set method is working fine. That's okay, perfect. We have we are going to test now that the display method, so the relationship and so on, it's working fine, perfect. What we are going to see is, once we convert those tables into that database, they are UTC 0, so it's very easy to compare. So we are going to check that if we have tables in the database at the same time, it works fine. So divide et impera. Remember the dog with the sword, you know? That's the spirit of unit tests. Don't try to see the whole development. Test each part isolated. I don't know, let's go for the validation, okay? We have the validation. We are validating when we create a booking that the dates of the daytime of that teacher are free. And we have to take into account the difference with the time zone. No, we don't have to take that into account, because what I've said before, we are testing that in the other methods. Here we are testing the validation. And the validation is going to compare what's in the database, because we already converted. So we are going to create a booking with a teacher that has a from date and a to date. And we are going to do the same here. We are saving that into the database. Those are not saved into the database. It's a transaction that when the test ends, it draws back. So it shouldn't get anything to the database, at least with the default settings. And the idea of unit test is to remain that way. And after that, when I have created a booking, I initialize a new booking, and then I'll call the validate, okay? So, but I am not calling because I made that test. So, I made that code, and the code is doing this, okay? So, I don't know if I should put greater or equal, or only greater, or less than or equal, or only less than. So because of that, what I am going to do for my test is, I have 4 dates. Yeah, that's high tech. I have 4 dates, 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I am going to create a booking when they are like that. I am going to create a booking when they are consecutive. I am going to create a booking when they are overlapping, and when they are the same, when one is inside the other. And those are many unit tests. Yeah, but the idea is to test everything that can cause me problems. So when they are consecutive, it could be a problem because I didn't know if I had to put the less or in fact, you know, there's a bug I intentionally put there because I messed up before. But the idea is that, so I create this test setup when I receive the dates. So I am going to receive the 1 and 2 date and the 3 and 4 date. Okay? Is it understood, more or less? Okay. So look how easy it is to create tests once we have this and it's maintainable and blah, blah, blah. Look how easy it is. You put UTC1, UTC2, UTC1, UTC2 when you want to test when the both registrations are between 1 and 2. And you check because you expect there to receive a false. Is this stupid? Yes. But what you achieve making small stupid things, it's not stupid. I test the overlap, so 1 to 3 and 2 to 4, so they have overlapping. I test when the first is 1 to 4 and the second is 2 to 3, and so on, okay? So I test every combination, and when I execute it, it's going to say, hey, you have messed up because it should be greater strict. But yeah, yeah, I know this is getting a little bit boring, and I said it was going to be fun, but it's unit tests. Come on. You have to understand it. So should work. And this is taking to fail because the booking consecutive, it's telling me, hey, you put the equals. So yeah, we knew because we saw it in the UI, but every time we develop something, do we have to test it in the UI? Really? Every time? Like, unit tests are not going to replace the UI, but do we have to, when you do something and you say, I don't know if it's working, what do? Do you go to the UI each time? Or do you keep going, and at the end you have a whole thing and hopefully it works? Or you create a runnable class and see to test your thing. You don't have to do all of this if you create that kind of tests, and it's going to be tested over the time. So for the lazy Fernie of the future, this is going to be very, very good to still in the coach, you know, drinking something. I'm not going to tell you. So how easy it is to see why it is not working if we do debug, and you have to put a breakpoint. That's not magic, and I forgot to do it. But you can debug directly, and it works a lot faster than compiling, refreshing. You know, you are developers. You know how slow it is. So we can save a lot of time. Well, you can debug it. Okay, I wanted to set it, but here you can see how it is basically failing, and it's failing because of the consecutive test case. So I know without having to read the code again and to, oh, what's going on? No, I know it's the consecutive, so it's probably this. I know it's this. And so I can build and test again. And it's going to work fine. Yeah, I need to build. Are those tests, was it shrimp? Yeah. Or rims. Let's see it. Yeah. Well, the validate at least is precise, because you saw that only knowing which test failed, I knew it was the case when they were consecutive. Why? Because I didn't do a test for every case. We tend to do that. At least I do. I would start testing that and saying, okay, I want to test this. And after this, in this same method, I would do another asset and another, I would do something like that, you know, copy paste. And probably all this logic would be not in a split method and add here the other case and the other case. And so it fails, and you have to debug to see which one of it, or put messages in the error. You don't have to split it. That's okay. It's better. And I am not saying that. Like, I read that from Martin Raab and those guys, and other, like, unit test is not XPP. It's wider. Yeah, we have. This is quick. It's fast. It's precise. It's reliable. Why? Because it's not using data. So if you have the same code as I have, it's going to get the same result. We are providing all the data. Also, it's maintainable. Yeah, we put it in a separate method. So add a new case. It's very easy. And oh yeah, I forgot to tell something. And this validation, if the requirements change and they want to add another, or they want to add another validation or whatever, but this validation is remaining, we are not changing this method. This is okay. This is unit testing what we want to unit test. So it shouldn't require maintenance. This, if we go here, what we are doing is in the validate write. In the validate write, we are testing validate bookings. Yeah, and so we test that the date to is going after the date from, and the teacher date time availability. So we are testing only the teacher date time availability. Are we creating a method for validate booking date times? No. Why? Because we already tested the validate teacher date time availability, and we are testing the validate date time to after date time from blah blah blah. So that's the thing. And for the display method would be very easy to test because it's an easy method. So we have in the display method, this is the display method test. This is the display method test without using ATL, okay? So the display method actual method, so the display method is this. You have a center. Yeah, it gets, yeah, from the court, you get this, the time zone of the time zone of the center. So what we need for our test, we need to create a center, we need to create a court. I could use here do insert if I want to. Don't put garbage in my unit test because I don't care the logic in the insert. I want to test my logic, and if the insert adds new logic, that could be a thing that adds extra complexity, that it makes my test not precise enough because it can fail because something in the insert is throwing an error or something. So maybe it fails and it's not telling me it's failing because of that, so it's not precise. So let's put do insert instead of insert, okay? That's the spirit of unit testing. Yeah?
But wouldn't having an insert be better to test if there's changes in the future? So we make sure that this logic still works if we change it.
If you want to test the display method, the insert is only adding noise, because you don't want to test the insert. The insert is probably tested by Microsoft or whatever.
Yes, but
And
there's new logic attached.
If you add logic to the insert, you should create a unit test for that logic that you add in the insert. Exactly. Okay. So this is working. I am not going to execute all of them. You can see how the get and the set are working. The display method is also working. I am not executing. And this is the same I did here, but using ATL, so you can see the difference. Here I use the normal way to create a table, and here I use the ATL. ATL bit center, set time zone, save. You have to construct all the ATLs needs to be constructed. I decided to construct them here in the setup, initialize them. So look how, for example, I have a court and I have a center, and I want to set the center to the court. I can send directly the ATL. So ATL is nice. I like it. It's like making it more friendly looking. You know, it's easier. And you can set the paddle court, and after that you call this. Look how I am putting the arrange. In a test, you always have an arrange phase where you provide the data you need, or an act when you do actually what the test is going to test, and an asset when you assert that the output of what you are testing is what you expect to be. So I am putting the logic of the arrange in a separate method. Why? Because I want to make it maintainable, and I don't know if I am going to add a new test for that particular method method when I want to test a specific other thing. In that case, I don't have it, but yeah. So, okay, I'll go very quick through this. We have this sys-table lookup. This is UI. How do we test? How do we unit test it? We cannot. So what we need to do is to split between logic and UI thing. The lookup is UI thing, but the logic is the query. So we have to refactor it and put the creation of the query in a separate method so we can test that query. And how are we going to test it? We insert the data, and basically we execute the query, and we see that we receive what we want to receive. And yeah, that's it. So yeah, going back to the PowerPoint, this is the end. Let me, this is the end. I was too slow, probably because it's in English and it's not my native language. Sorry for the extra time. Yeah, it was nice. And so, yeah, okay. I might pique your interest. You might now be thinking, okay, yeah, let's try it. If Martin Rapp says that it's okay, probably it is. Let's try it. Why not? I encourage you to try it, because at the very first beginning it's bad, like you don't want to do it, but it's amazing when you start doing it and you have your code testing, you feel really great. But how do you justify it to your client? Well, and with that, that's the end of the presentation. I have no idea. I mean, we are not. Do we need to justify it to the client? I mean, we are developers. We don't talk to the client. No, just kidding. How did we convince them to have a source control? And how did we convince them to prevent them for touching directly into the database of production? We did. Maybe because Microsoft forced us, or I don't know why. But yeah, but wasn't it a good change to follow the Microsoft? Yeah. So do we need the Microsoft forcing us, or yeah? And until we don't really believe this is adding value and this is good, we are continue to say an excuse to not to do it. And yeah, thank you for your time, and thanks for the sponsors that made all these events possible. And yeah, that's it. Thank you.